there, it's Asa here. Today I'm gonna talk about a different topic that is different than the main game that I'm always cover about. It's about anime games in general and games that has utilized the whole anime aesthetic as a mainstay. I think it's actually pretty interesting to look at this time period as the renaissance of sorts for anime-based game because not only for the most part all these anime games are actually pretty cheap or are easily found or are free to play completely for most players who either play from their mobile phones or on their PCs or consoles. It's actually a very great time for a lot of companies that usually don't really push out anime games to actually consider them as a viable option nowadays. So back then, anime is like a very niche kind of a fan base. It's not that huge. It's actually not that huge or not that small as well. It's like in the middle, in between other fandoms, I guess. It was always not noticed because it's the weird medium that crossovers in between cartoon and real life human beings, and they somehow mash them together and it became anime. Now anime shape is the characters of the eyes proportions and the face proportions is definitely off if you are a realistic face proportionist or artist or stuff like that. You understand what I'm talking about. But the fact that they actually managed to popularize it from Japan and actually export it out and be extremely popular with a lot of fans from Asia alone, like for example China, a lot of things, a lot of people thought Chinese, the relationship between China and Japan and South Korea is pretty bad or something because of the World War II and what happened there. But actually, if you look carefully, the young people are not instead. The young people in every single of those countries, however, enjoy cross-culture exports. For example, South Korea has a very huge manhwa kind of genre to them. They also have their own style of anime, which is called manhwa or donghua. It's the same equivalent to something like the Chinese manhwa as well, but because they are Korean, so yeah, they have their own distinct style. It still looks anime, but I think the main protagonist and the characters distinctly look like they are much more slender or much more taller in stature, usually because they represent what K-pop stars looks like, I guess. But yeah, that's the very, very unique kind of an export of anime stuff to actually reach to both Japan, or not just Japan, but to America, to South Korea, to China especially. The Chinese 3D and animation and 2D animation genre has been completely relying on the exports of Japanese anime since the early 2000s, and from then on, I believe a lot of young teenagers have been growing up with watching a lot of translated Japanese anime that are dubbed in Chinese or just have been available on television back then. That is why there is a lot of anime fans that have grown up, and turns out they are very, very great at creating anime or just creating anime related mediums. For example, if you go to the site like Bilibili, you will see there's so many amazing animation showcases that's being done by their own fan base and their own creator base, which is insane. Because for one part, you always thought that anime is going to be only popular in Japan because it's the place where every anime things originated from. But you just realize that the whole China actually adopted the whole anime aesthetic for example to actually being used for themselves as well, which is pretty strange because you would think they have resentment against Japanese media or something, but apparently when it comes to anime, everybody just happy. It's like they all have wars back then, and then once they talk about anime, however, they all shaking hands together. It's like a weird kind of a cultural exchange that every single young people actually agrees on that they also enjoy together. Like, I know, the American also has like its own manga and its animation stuff like that. For example, that in Avatar, The Last Airbender, and Korra. But then it doesn't really like get much more like mainstream, like in comparison to something like a Japanese animation. So yeah, I do respect those existing ones, but it's not as apparently as successful as something like the Chinese animations or Korean ones, because they do have their own hits. Then they always have their very popular mangas adapted into anime, and it actually usually will be airing on like multiple countries, like in Japan, China, South Korea, so on. So what I'm trying to say here, I wonder. Well, I wanted to say that I'm actually very glad that the Chinese, especially, they actually adopted this anime aesthetic, because now they didn't really care if the anime aesthetic is coming or originated from Japan itself. It's more like they took it and they expanded upon it and they improvised the style, and it actually eventually fits so well that they decided to make anime versions of their Chinese cultural aesthetics as well, which is pretty interesting, because considering the fact that Japan borrows a lot of ancient Chinese culture as well, and exported from China because of the Buddhist monks and everything, and then even some food are literally parallel, like the if I'm not wrong, the jiaozi and everything is, the gyoza is literally like almost the same thing. It's just that they are different names, I guess, but they are technically from China as well. So it's not really like weird. It's not really strange to say like these two exports are actually pretty popular. But hey, I'm really glad that the Chinese are able to adopt this anime aesthetic, and they eventually created something like Genshin Impact, because I believe that game itself brought in a whole new category of fans of anime, and it brought anime into the mainstream since the whole pandemic situation actually happened. And now, of course, there is goods and bad that comes with anime going mainstream. Number one, people will be arguing if age of a character is important to be noted of or not, or maybe a character's age doesn't really matter in anime because they are still drawings or they are still digital art. It's not really real life persons, so they don't really. There's a lot of arguments on if lollies are legal or not, but I don't really want to go into that kind of discussion, because I believe every single Chinese gacha game has a younger looking character. That means they don't really care about the character's age, and instead they just prefer that players like those aesthetics instead. Now, don't get me wrong, you can hate this category of characters that looks a bit too young or something like that, because there is also the other side, which is big mommy personalities, I guess you could say. So you don't really have to worry about that, because I believe anime can encompass all kinds of styles, designs, aesthetics, and everybody have their own tastes and particular likings. So I don't really want to force everybody to like a certain anime style, But other than that, I wanted to say that, because of this whole anime renaissance is happening, we get a lot of like cool mobile games that are based on anime waifus that are all completely free to play, and usually they are very successful because well, anime games and gacha is kind of like inseparable nowadays. I do know there are anime games that are extremely free to play as well, like I don't know, PSO2 is technically one of them as well, but it's more like a PC, a console game, but it's free to play, right? There's also other anime games that are pretty good. Persona, for example. There's also other kind of aesthetics that a lot of people also like the Tales of series is also having a very great comeback. the Trails of the Whatever series also is coming back as well, which is pretty amazing. Grand Blue Fantasy is also going to release its own standalone game finally since a long time, and it looks pretty cool. And then, of course, let's not forget about Brew Protocol, which is releasing just in another days, in just a few days. And I just can't wait to see if it's how great this MMORPG would be, especially as an anime MMORPG, because we are really lacking in that current day. Like, don't get me wrong, I mean, MMORPG don't really need to be like anime aesthetic, but for the most part, I've been itching for that anime MMORPG because it just looks like you are actually watching one of your animes, you know, stuff like that. That is why it's so important and really, really relevant to the current discussion that we have today. So, will this renaissance continue? I'll just say yes. If you look at the success of Honkai Star Rail, you might be wondering why that this turn-based game suddenly has more revenue than, you know, Genshin Impact somehow. Well, it's more like because the game has a good story, it has impelling and cool characters, it has a pretty nice gameplay that everybody can enjoy casually instead of like min-maxing like Genshin, I guess. But that is really subjective. I still think Genshin is a good game if you don't force yourself to play it all the time, I guess. But other than that, I just wish the best for the whole anime genre, and I just wish there are more innovations in the industry in terms of like their mobile game industry, especially because looking forward to the newer gacha releases that are pretty exciting for anime fans as well, because there's so many new anime titles that are releasing from China themselves. It's pretty strange to say this, but it's more like the anime industry is actually being forced to innovate because of China itself. There is a lot of like Chinese companies that's literally having crazy successful titles. Like example, of course, is MiHoYo or HoYoverse as a company, or very, very obvious. There is also Yostar. There is also other companies as well. Like there is also the Girls Frontline Mika company. They are also doing pretty well, and they are going to release the XCOM version of their game soon as well. I'm very, very looking forward to it. And also, I'm recently also playing the Snowbreak Containment Zone, which is literally what I expected of Girls Frontline 2 would look like. But, you know, it's alright, you know, it's alright for them to competing against another anime waifu game with rifles, I guess. It's fine. And I'm really glad because of this, because of all these competitions, that you could see so many amazing anime games coming out. And anime fans are really eating good this time, especially in 2023. So let's just look forward to 2024 and beyond, and hopefully there will be even more anime games for anime fans to enjoy. And also, you know, the new anime seasons is also pretty cool. Hey, there's that as well. So for now, I'll just say, just hope that there's more, you know, games like that. They are very high quality and like they are not made for like just for the sake of monetization, I guess. Hopefully, you know, Zenless Zone Zero is also going to be its unique kind of a thing from HoYoverse again, and we'll see something about Arknight's end feed as well. So that's all I'm gonna talk about the whole anime game industry, I guess. It's a very, very broad kind of sentiment, because I also know that there's a lot of like new anime Japanese games that are actually going to be released soon as well, because of the whole, you know, Genshin Impact's success forcing them to innovate as well. So of course the Japanese studios are going to do it as well. Then we can try to one up as well. So it's a good thing, everything overall for everybody. So take care, and that's all from me today. Sayonara.